Good evening, Nashville. Welcome to Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, Laura Deer. Our topic tonight is keys to your child's success. Our guests tonight are Dr. Joe Phillips and Ms. Kavita Portia. Dr. Phillips received his bachelor's degree in physical education and elementary education from MTSU, his master's degree in administration and supervision from MTSU, and his EDS in curriculum and instruction from MTSU. His doctorate is in curriculum and instruction from TSU. He's been the principal at John Coleman Elementary for 15 years. John Coleman is a reward school, which means it's in the top 5% of the state for growth. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It also received all A's on the state report card for the 7th year in a row. Dr. Phillips is also a professor at MTSU. He teaches administration and supervision and curriculum and instruction. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Ms. Kavita Portia has been a counselor for 9 years. She split between Stewart's Creek Elementary and David Urey Elementary in Smyrna. She has a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in counseling from TSU. She has her EDS in instructional leadership from Tennessee Tech. She's also a professor at the University of Phoenix teaching psychology, and she's training to be a sign language interpreter. Thank you for coming too.
Thank you.
Well, I'm excited about our topic because we're all educators and we love kids. So we're talking about how a parent can make their child more successful. So I'd like to start with routine, because I think routine makes kids feel secure, and routines at home and at school. Do you have any specific recommendations to make mornings or afternoons easier and more successful and less stressful for parents?
Well, what I like to say is, what an honor it is to be a parent. It's the most honorable, the best job you can have to, raise a child from child to adolescent to adulthood. So that's a role we need to take very, very seriously. I actually have a daughter, have one child, and what a joy it is to be around her. And I think anybody can be a parent, but to be a successful parent, it's a very hard job. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication, and to raise a successful child, they need to know the importance of school, and that starts, by the time they're born. But getting them ready for school in the afternoons, really you got to spend time. The main thing is you got to spend time with the child when they get home from school. That's a very important time. Get the homework out of the way before they go outside and play or before you have dinner. Communication's such a big thing. Spend time with them. Mm-hmm. Like I said, anybody can be a parent, but to be successful, you got to have good quality time with them. At the supper table, good one-on-one time with the family. And then little things like in the evenings before bed, which I do. I learned from my parents, and my daughter learns, from her mother and I. I lay my clothes out. I lay my clothes out. I run every afternoon, so I get my running clothes. I put them, by the door, so she's ready to go. Then she has a good routine every morning. Taking her shower. I'm a big believer in breakfast. Eat a good breakfast. That's the most important meal. Eat a good breakfast. Just love on them. Mm-hmm. Let them get ready for the day. Get them in good spirits. Put them in a good mood, and ship them out the door, where they ride a bus or you take them. If you take them, talk to them on the way about things for the school. How to be a good child. We teach these things.
Mm-hmm.
These things kids don't learn. We have to take time and teach them and show them how to be a good citizen.
Right.
Okay. I would just like to add that, or just stress how important consistency is. Mm-hmm. Kids crave routine. They crave structure. They always want to know what's next. Mm-hmm. And if a routine is practiced, they'll know what's next. They'll always know what's next. They'll be able to tell you what's next on the schedule for the evening or for the morning. And it just becomes something that they are programmed to do. They know where they put their backpack. Right. They know where their breakfast is in the refrigerator, or where to grab their lunchbox from. Mm-hmm. So when they get in the car, they know that they have everything they need, and they feel that they carry the responsibility for those things. So healthy snacks in the afternoons are very, very important. We need to try to stay away from the sugary snacks that are convenient. They are convenient and they're quick, but we are setting a standard for what our kids will eat when they're adults, what they'll grab to snack on when they're 21 or 30. So those are some things that I just wanted to add on.
What about bedtime? It seems like if kids don't get enough sleep, they come to school kind of off their mark. You know, not only if they come late to school, but if they haven't slept well the night before. Any suggestions for nighttime rituals? Or?
It's I don't know about a ritual. You know, routine is a real good thing. I know as an adult, I need 8 hours. A lot of people don't. I just like a good 8 hours, and we model that. You know, we need to model that as parents for our kids. Kids need 8 hours or more. You know, so just, you know, a good routine after you watch your last favorite show or you read your last favorite book. You know, walk with them to the bedroom after they brush their teeth, do their chores. You know, walk to the bed with them, sit down with them. You know, kiss them, hug them, tell them you love them, tuck them in. You know, same time every night. That's just, you know, that's a good night's sleep is so important, getting ready for the next day.
I agree. Do you have any advice for divorced parents whose kids are split between two homes?
It's a great question. Again, consistency comes into play. I think consistency is very important. Children need to feel that they are important and valued in each home. So if they have their own room or their own bed at mom's house, it should be the same at dad's house. The room may be smaller, but they still have their own space where they feel they can be a child. That's very important. Parents need to communicate about what the rules are and what their expectations are, and it needs to be a united front so that there's no manipulation. Children will do that if they have the opportunity, and 4-year-olds will do it, 18-year-olds will do it. But if there's no opportunity for that because parents are communicating, it just works out best for the child. So communication between the parents is key. I would also suggest that parents not have their arguments and disagreements in front of the child. Children carry those things with them. They bring them to school with them, and they start to feel like the divorce was their fault. And they feel stuck and they feel trapped in the middle. So if at all possible, it needs to be a smooth transition. Not all divorces are amicable, but we would hope that parents would work together to make sure that the child is still the most important person in that relationship.
Yeah, the child doesn't need to be pulled back and forth or used as a weapon.
Exactly.
You know, she said many great things. Only thing I'll add is, as an administrator, I don't know what percentage of kids, you know, come from, you know, broken homes. Not a large percent, but let's say it's 50%. Many parents do a great job. They do a great job as divorced parents. They both, you know, equally love their child. They both have equal responsibilities and equal time with their child. But there's a small percentage. I know at my school there's 500 kids. We probably have we have many court documents, you know, but only about 5%, you know, let's say 7 or 8 kids, something like that, where it's a big issue. I mean, the kids are great. I mean, the kids are great. It's the parents that make the child unhappy, the teacher unhappy. You know, myself, you know, we always have to bring the court document out, and it's, instead of wanting to get along, they make it so hard for each other. It's like, you cannot, and what I tell parents is, you know, sir, ma'am, I'm sorry, we go straight by the court document, what the judge says, not your attorney, you know, what the judge says. He's the one that's, you know, we follow his rules. And, you know, some parents, you know, if you have Wednesday night custody and every other weekend custody, well, they won't let you, they make sure it's written in the document, you can't come see your child through the week. You can't come have lunch with him, you can't pick him up. And that's what makes it hard. And the only person that's hurting is the child. We understand the parents don't like each other. We understand and accept that. But in those instances, it's really the parents that despise each other so much, they're trying to make each other so miserable that they make it uncomfortable and inconvenient for the child and the employees of the school.
And they don't realize how difficult it makes it for the child to concentrate during the school day, or and they can suffer signs of depression, or it's just very stressful on a child when their parents are not a united front, even if they're divorced. There is a way to have an amicable divorce and have the child put first.
That's something we'll touch on before we conclude tonight. Is about how it affects a child, not necessarily the divorce, but all the many aspects, about confidence and motivation and
Yes.
Initiative and different things. I'd like to touch on some of those things because it's what makes a child, and parents are the sole responsibility. I mean, it's I don't know if I should even say this or not, but you can look in a classroom, and most kids are great, and they're great, but you have some that have issues, whether they're academic issues, or behavioral issues, social issues, not necessarily the academic so much, but behavioral and social issues come straight from the parents. And you can walk in a classroom, any expert walk in a classroom and just pick out the 2 or 3 students, like a small number, that have such bad home lives. And it's all parenting.
And it's heartbreaking for us because we want to be able to help, but we can't control what goes on.
Yes, ma'am.
When they're not in our care.
Exactly right.
Well, I think you're right. The parental support is so critical. I'm curious, how did your parents support you in your education?
My mother, I grew up with a single mother. She was very adamant about me receiving the best education that I could. I grew up in Memphis, and my mother was serious. She was very serious about me doing my very best every day, and it didn't matter where we lived or what our neighborhood was like. I was not able to make excuses. When I went to college, there were times when we may not have had money for tuition, but my mother was so determined that I was going to get my degree. She sold our car to pay my tuition one semester. That's how much it meant to her. And so I was determined not to let her down and to do my very best for her and to excel, because I knew it was important to her, and in turn it was important to me as well. But she let me know that education was the most important thing in my life. And my mother only earned her associate's degree as a nurse's aide, but she wanted me to go even further than she did, and that was very important to her. So when I got home from all of my many practices, cheerleading and track, it was homework. And then it was, a few minutes of maybe the telephone, but then it was bed. And she was very serious. And she didn't let me, get out of my chores and other things that I was supposed to do. She helped me understand the importance of routine in the afternoons and in the mornings. And when I didn't do what I was supposed to do, there were consequences. There were consequences, and I didn't like them at the time. I did not care for them, but now as a parent, I understand what my mother was trying to instill in me. So I'm very glad that she did those things.
Because you went on to get your master's and an EDS, so that's amazing. And yeah, you have a lot to thank her for.
I do. I absolutely do.
Well, parents, I've mentioned, just play a huge influence on our lives. At my house, there were really no great expectations. My parents wanted us, all 4 of us kids, to graduate from high school. My mother went to Cone High School here in Nashville. She probably dropped out, maybe she may have made it to 11th grade. And my father, he quit school in the 4th grade. He went to the 4th grade. Education is a big thing for both of them. They realized their shortcomings. Very poor growing up. My mother worked at the Dairy Pride making 50 cents an hour. I mentioned that to you earlier. And my dad worked in a lumber yard. He probably made 75 cents an hour. So we were really poor. But and I'm the baby of 4, so I guess they learned a lot when they got to me. I'm the baby. I'm the only one that has a degree. it was real important. Education was real important. I remember studying. They made me study. I guess really what I want to say is they made me study. They know that they didn't make it, and it was real important for us, you know, to get a high school education. And really for them, that was it. I mean, if we all graduated, that was a really big deal. And when I did graduate from high school, I went straight to work at Firestone, Bridgestone, and Laverne, and realized real quick there had to be something better for me. It was really, really hard work. I respect those people so much, but it was very hard. I think, and if I can give advice, you know, some people go straight from high school straight to college and fail, you know. But if you work in the real world for a couple years, it made all the difference to me, because I realized I just can't do this. There's got to be something better for me. But working in the real world made me realize if I'd have gone straight, because I was a very average student in high school, in middle school and elementary school, if I'd have gone straight to college out of high school, I wouldn't have made it. You know, I would have flunked out. But working in the real world made me realize, you know, I got to persevere and earn a degree.
Well, and you've been very successful.
Well, I'm very fortunate. Had good people behind me.
That's right. Did you have any family traditions that helped you guys? Because I know family traditions can help bond families and make kids feel more secure. I didn't know if you had any family traditions that either as you were growing up or that you have with your families now that could be an example to families that are listening.
Okay. Well, in my home currently, I have 2 small children. My kids are 6 and 4. My son is in 1st grade. He's reading everything, which is awesome. I love to hear him read. My daughter is an emerging reader. She wants to read, but she can't yet. But my son has to read to me every afternoon when we get home. He's reading about on an early 2nd grade level now, and he's in 1st grade. So he reads very well, and my daughter reads. She gets a book and she makes up the story, which is a great pre-reading skill. Yes. So we have homework time. I sit there and I listen to him read, and then I listen to her read, and it makes her feel just as important as my son. And it's a good feeling for me to know that I am doing what I'm supposed to do as a parent. But we're bonding. We're spending time together on the couch reading our books. And it's a good thing, and I enjoy it.
What tips do you have for parents in reading, helping their children developing those good reading habits or enjoying reading?
Well, it's a lifelong process. I think you even hear about people, you know, reading to their child in the belly.
Yeah.
You know, that happens a lot. Just when they're born, start reading to them. You know, model it, read to them. You know, we have pictures at home with our little girl. You know, she's reading with the books upside down. You know, and then a couple of years later, we have friends over, and I can't remember the name of the book, but we read it to her so much, and she loved the book so much, she could. Every word, she didn't miss one word. I mean, she could look at the pictures and know what the animal was and what was going on. And she would read, she didn't read a word, but she would read the whole entire book. And she was like 3 years old, and people say, how can she read already? And of course, she couldn't read a word, you know, but she could read that book because we read so much. So really, it's a continuing, lifelong thing. I'm such a big believer in reading, mainly because I struggled as a kid. I despised reading. My mom and I would fight every night for hours. You know, I mean, it's homework at my house as a kid was such a struggle. And I tell parents now all the time, if they would work as hard doing their homework as hard as they work of getting out of it, that it would take 30 minutes. Right. You know, it would take me 2 hours to get very little done because I fought it so much. So just starting them early and just letting them know the importance is the main thing. It's, you know, it opens up so many worlds. You can be as smart as you want to be just by reading. I'm a huge believer in reading.
I also want to add that when parents are at home reading with their children or listening to their children read, it's important for them to understand that all children are different and they develop at different rates. So talk to the child's teacher about where that child should be as a 1st grader or as a 4th grader. What should you be looking for? What kind of encouragement can you give the child? When to help and when not to help. You know, when to have that child sound out the word. or look at the picture to see if they can figure out what the word is. Yeah. Those things are important because I think sometimes as parents we get frustrated and we think, well, I know that word. Why doesn't he know that word? Well, you're a grown-up and you've seen that word, you know, thousands of times. Well, this word is new to this child. So find out from the teacher what those milestones are and those benchmarks that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Talking about that, talk about how important the parent-teacher relationship is and how parents can better develop a positive relationship with their teachers.
Let me go back to the question 4 that you asked about, about traditions. I talk to parents all the time. You know, when kids are struggling, there's so many kids that do struggle, so many. What's so important, I think, is almost every child, especially when they get like in middle school and in high school, even in elementary, I just think they have to be involved in some activity. I'm not talking about sports. Sports is great. I mean, sports is great. If every kid could be involved, that would be one thing. Plus, there's so many sports now, so many opportunities for kids that weren't. I mean, soccer, when I was a kid, there was no such thing as soccer. You know, now any child can play soccer. Right. But besides that, you know, there's, in schools, there's so many activities, so many clubs. You know, I could never play any kind of instrument, but I admire people who can play an instrument. You know, so there's, you know, my advice would be just get them involved in something. If you're, you know, a lot of people that fail in school, they're not attached. They don't have ownership and responsibility and involvement in that school, and they get further apart, further away, then they're not connected at all with the teacher or the kids or anything, and just leads to a lot of bad things that can happen. Right. But if you get them involved, it's so important even for teachers to get every kid involved in school, whether it's, you know, let them be manager of the fish tank. You know, let them empty the trash. Let them be the one that empties the pencil shavings. Let them be the one that takes up paper. If you get a child that feels involved, it can turn them around. It can turn them around and make them, they feel, even the classroom. You know, and teachers are great. Teachers are great at it. They know so much. But if I could say anything about just every child, get them involved in something.
Mm-hmm. What about chores at home?
Well, that's you know, that's a great question. That's, you know, we can talk about responsibility and motivation. I'm a believer in it. I probably didn't make my daughter do enough. I can't tell you many chores. Cleaning her room was probably one, and you know, her mom probably ended up doing that half the time. But chores are a great thing. I think you need to have. And we didn't really talk much about expectations, but that's such an important thing, you know, in education. What our parents expected all of us to do. But I'm all for chores.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it helps kids feel like they're an important part of the family. They're needed for something. And I think kids like to feel important and necessary part of the family.
Absolutely.
Do your kids do chores?
My kids have just started doing laundry, and we fold clothes. Where they take the clothes out of the dryer and they fold them, usually towels on the floor. They're probably dirty by the time they finish folding them, but they take ownership and they put those towels up in the linen closet, and they feel really proud. They feel like that is their job, and so now when they see me doing it, they go, "No, Mama, that's my job. I do the towels." Mm-hmm. And so hopefully they will be able to do laundry all by themselves in a few years. Mm-hmm. But it's a chore that they love to do. Mm-hmm.
Before we run out of time, I want to go back to that question you wanted to talk about, was about the gifts you can give your children, like the motivation. You start talking about that. Can you explain that a little more?
Yes, I can. Wrote me a couple of notes. You know, I wrote down confidence, motivation, perseverance, and initiative. Those are things we as parents, and this television show's about, you know, about parents and schooling. It's all, we have the biggest influence on our kids. You know, we teach them those things. It's not something that happens. You know, confidence is giving them opportunities to be successful. You know, it all revolves around the parenting, and you know, I mentioned motivation, perseverance, initiative. We could really talk a lot about them, but those are 4 that just don't be a quitter. You know, something very important here about perseverance is failure. Everybody fails many times. You know, my philosophy is, you know, in my lifetime, I've failed probably 100 times for every one success. You know, and we learn and get better from those failures. But just stand behind your child, be with your child, be a loving parent, caring parent, and those things lead to great successes with your children.
Mm-hmm.
Positivity. Just speaking positive things over your children. And there will be times when you need to criticize and correct, but make sure they get praise. Mm-hmm. Make sure you find those specific things that they're doing right and celebrate those things within your home and at school. Mm-hmm. Find out what went right about the school day and celebrate those things. Make the child feel like their day and the things that go on within their day are important and worth talking about.
Sometimes we're trained to see what's going wrong. We need to train ourselves to see what's going right and focus on that so we get more of it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I just want to thank you guys for coming so much. I really enjoyed this. I wish we had lots more time to talk. Dr. Phillips, congratulations on all your success.
Thank you,
John
ma'am.
Coleman.
Thank you. Very fortunate.
It's a model school with great success, and a lot of people look to you for an example of what principals should be and do. So,
well, thank you for your kind words.
I appreciate
I take my job very serious.
And of course, I think a lot of you, because we've had a chance to work together. And I want to thank you for coming and adding your insight, because you're so great with kids.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us tonight for Let's Talk About It. Good night and God bless.